Hey, everybody. It is Tuesday, September 16th. You're listening to the Mo News Podcast. I'm Moshe Wanunu.
And I am Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts.
And we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. Coming to you today, Jill, from Washington, D.C.
And Moshe, what brings you there?
So very exciting. I'm part of the Stagwell Disruptor Media Showcase. They're featuring a whole number of new media platforms, social media, podcasters, newsletters, some that you are very familiar with, some on the left, some on the right, some down in the middle. And so very excited to be part of that today for a quick, what is this, about a 18-hour trip to Washington.
And Moshe, as always in Washington, D.C., you tend to spot some politicians in unlikely places or maybe not so unlikely places. And you got a Gerald Nadler sighting.
Yeah, Jerry Nadler is the congressman who represents most of Manhattan. We've been talking about the race to replace him, took the train down from New York, went over to the food car to get a snack, and ended up standing in line behind Congressman Nadler. That's always a thing you need to keep in mind whenever you take the DC to New York train. You never know who might be listening, who might be sitting behind you, in front of you, or who you might run into in the food car. So the retiring congressman, my congressman, I saw him ever so briefly in the food car number 4.
If my memory serves me, there is a plot line in The Newsroom, that old Aaron Sorkin show on HBO, where one of the producers overhears a conversation on the Acela or one of the trains going from DC to New York. And yeah, a lesson, be careful what you say on that train. Someone's listening.
There have been many stories that have been broken just by journalists just listening in. And never, if you're a journalist or if you're interested in what's going on, never have your headphones in on the Acela.
Or have them in, but have them off.
Yes, have them in. But don't be listening to anything.
All right, now to the headlines. The latest on the investigation into Charlie Kirk's killing, with the alleged shooter posted on Discord after the murder, and what we're learning about a potential motive. Also, could FBI Director Kash Patel soon get the boot? Who could potentially take over the FBI?
And Jill, in a first, the vice president yesterday, J.D. Vance, guest hosted the Charlie Kirk show. We have a bit of what he had to say, along with some of his White House guests who joined him.
In tech news, a potential deal to keep TikTok alive in the United States, what we know about it. And President Trump says the U.S. struck a second alleged drug boat from Venezuela.
Jill reinforcing that they have really pivoted the drug strategy, the drug war strategy, over to the Pentagon.
The FBI arrests 2 men for allegedly placing an incendiary device under a local Fox News affiliate in Utah. Moshe, why this could have been very, very bad. To the race for New York City mayor, the governor of New York finally endorsing the Democratic frontrunner, Zohran Mamdani.
Yeah, why she's finally doing it 10 weeks after his primary victory. And we'll have President Trump's latest threat to New York State as he watches this election.
And my favorite topic, food shopping, Moshe. Imagine paying for a shopping cart when you go to the supermarket. It happens overseas, and the U.S. could be next.
Yeah, so less about the food in the cart and the cart itself on today's podcast.
Yeah, now the cart's getting more expensive.
For the record, Jill, you get your money back once you return the cart, unless you plan to take the shopping cart home with you, in which case, yes, you have paid for it.
And Moshe is on this day in history.
Jill, if anyone went to a bar or club between, 2002 and 2011, you likely heard a song by this artist who celebrates a big birthday on this day.
Okay, starting with the latest on the investigation into the killing of Charlie Kirk at a Utah university last week. We learned Monday that the suspect, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, reportedly confessed to the killing in a small chat group on the online platform Discord. The Washington Post reports that just hours before his family turned him into police, Robinson wrote into a small online chat group of about 30 people. Quote, "Hey guys, I have bad news for you all. It was me at UVU yesterday. I'm sorry for all of this." That message was sent Thursday night, about 2 hours before officials said Robinson was taken into custody. A member of the group chat shared an image of the conversation with the Washington Post, and Discord also reportedly provided a copy of the message with that confession to authorities. And the Discord conversation shared with the Post also shows members of that group chat reacting to Kirk's shooting. So before that suspect said he was involved, someone wrote, "I just saw the video, holy blank, bro didn't deserve to go out like that. Sad. The next day, the suspect wrote, quote, "Bad news. I am surrendering through a sheriff friend in a few moments. Thanks for all the good times and laughs. You've all been so amazing. Thank you all for everything." We reported yesterday as well about some of the back and forth in which some of the members of the chat had previously joked that Robinson looked like the shooter, to which he said, yes, it was his doppelganger, and he was joking about getting some of the reward money. Most fascinating insight into just his frame of mind.
Yeah, you often see that with these murderers. They closely follow the investigation. In this case, you get a glimpse into not only that he was following it, but how he was commenting about it to his friends, initially joking about it, and then effectively copping to it on Discord. It's notable that he basically owned up to it with his father, owned up to it on Discord, but based on what we're hearing from authorities so far, from law enforcement officials, he has not confessed since his arrest. He has not spoken up. He is not cooperating with investigators, at least not since they've taken him into custody late on Thursday night. But we have learned that there is additional evidence against the shooter here. FBI Director Kash Patel said he's been linked to evidence at the scene through DNA sequencing. Patel said yesterday that DNA matching Robinson was found on a towel allegedly wrapped around the gun that he used to kill Kirk that was discarded in a wooded area near the university. The DNA was also found on a screwdriver on the rooftop there, the implication being that he was taking apart and putting together the gun with that screwdriver.
We're also learning more about a possible motive. FBI Director Kash Patel telling Fox and Friends that the alleged shooter's actions were premeditated and based on his political left-leaning beliefs. Patel said, quote, "His family has collectively told investigators that he subscribed to left-wing ideology, and even more so in these last couple of years." And he had a text message exchange, the suspect with another individual, in which he claimed that he had an opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and he was going to do it because of his hatred for what Charlie stood for.
Meanwhile, Patel himself is receiving a lot of criticism from the right and from the left for his handling of the investigation. As we reported just a few hours after Kirk was killed, Patel, in a very rare, and by rare I mean I don't think it's ever been done, move by an FBI director, tweeted that they had the subject in custody. That turned out to be inaccurate. Just a couple hours later, he had to correct himself. And so Patel received a lot of criticism for that, for sort of feeding the misinformation environment. Patel defending that decision on Fox News yesterday.
I was being transparent with working with the public on our findings as I had them. I stated in that message that we had a subject and that we were going to interview him, and we did, and he was released. The job of the FBI is not just to manhunt the actual suspect who did the killing or suspects, but it's also to eliminate targets and eliminate subjects who are not involved in the process, and that's what we were doing. Could I have worded it a little better in the heat of the moment? Sure. But do I regret putting it out? Absolutely not.
Patel has also been talking openly about some of the evidence in this case. He's getting criticism for that. That's all pretty unusual. And we should note, interestingly, Fox News had this big report that came out in the last 24 hours that had sources, 10 sources from inside the White House and at the Department of Justice, saying that senior officials there are not happy with Patel. That includes Attorney General Mamdani, her number 2 of the Justice Department, saying they don't have any confidence in Patel. One source saying that Bondi apparently cannot stand Patel. This is not surprising altogether, given what has unfolded around the Epstein files and the back and forth and the leaks that have been happening between the FBI and the DOJ. But officially, while all the sources were anonymous in this Fox News story, still interesting given it's Fox News and they're very well sourced on this stuff. Officially, Patel and others are pushing back on it. Dan Bongino was on the Megyn Kelly podcast yesterday. He doesn't know what anyone's talking about. They're proud of their record. There's no issue. Everyone is getting along hunky-dory there at the Justice Department and FBI. Nonetheless, at the same time, a former senior official from Missouri, the Missouri Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, was sworn into power in a new role at the FBI. He's going to be sharing the deputy director role with Dan Bongino. It's leading some folks inside to speculate that there might be a higher job there for him, including FBI director. He becomes eligible to fill the FBI director role after 90 days there. So some suspect that he's been brought in sort of as a way to push Patel out at some point. And they're probably not going to push Patel out completely. The word from this Fox News story is that he'll be given a different position within the administration. So we'll see what happens there. One thing we'll be watching today, Kash Patel will be going before Congress on camera. And so imagine the investigation, along with Epstein and other issues, will come up there today.
Also on Monday, Vice President J.D. Vance guest hosted Charlie Kirk's podcast, which is called The Charlie Kirk Show. Speaking from his office in the White House complex on Monday, Vance said that he was filling in for someone who cannot be filled in for. He said he will do his best. He called Kirk the smartest political operative that he's ever met, saying that he owes so much to Charlie. And he also called out what he calls, quote, the incredibly destructive movement of left-wing extremism that has grown up over the last few years. He said he believes it is part of the reason why Charlie was killed by an assassin's bullet. So take a listen.
I'm desperate for our country to be united in condemnation of the actions and the ideas that killed my friend. I want it so badly that I will tell you a difficult truth. We can only have it with people who acknowledge that political violence is unacceptable, and when we work to dismantle the institutions that promote violence and terrorism in our own country.
Jill, one of the things that was notable yesterday is that J.D. Vance, like we've seen from President Trump, has been very aggressive in condemning what he calls left-wing extremism, left-wing violence. And it comes, as we've heard from other officials, like the governor of Utah, who've been calling for unity here. But you have seen a number of White House officials take direct aim there. And one of the things he did yesterday was Vance cited a poll, a recent YouGov poll, that showed about 25% of self-described very liberal Americans say that violence can be justified for political goals, while only 4% of people who describe themselves as very conservative say so. And so he was trying to make the argument that liberals are much more of a threat to this country than conservatives. It's something we've heard from President Trump. We played a little bit of that yesterday on the podcast. I will note that there have been studies conducted that show that there, in the last few decades, been more right-wing violence than left-wing violence in the U.S. But that poll, YouGov, stands, and I know that's been the subject of hot debate in the comments, Jill, on our Instagram feed. But I just wanted to give you guys a little background there.
And then there was the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller. He was one of the guests on the show yesterday. And he said, quote, we are going to channel all of the anger that we have over the organized campaign that led to this assassination to uproot and dismantle these terrorist networks. He said they're going to use every resource that they have at the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and throughout the government to identify, disrupt, dismantle, and destroy these networks and make America safe again for the American people. So, Moshe, this investigation in its infancy, but you can already see between Stephen Miller and Vance and others that they feel that this is systemic as part of this extreme left-wing ideology, and that they don't look at this as kind of like a one-off individual lone wolf type of thing. What can they actually do here?
Well, let's back up here. We don't know much about Robinson's ideology, right? We do know that he got in political over time, but in terms of specifics, in terms of politics, we still are waiting to learn more here. Right, we have learned about the partner that he lived with, the trans partner that may have spoken to a bit of his motive, given how critical Charlie Kirk was on that issue. But beyond that, we don't know much, and we don't know that there's a larger systemic issue here. In many cases, and the people who sort of study gamer culture here will tell you that the larger issue among sort of angry young men is they can't really be fit into one box, that their views are much more nihilistic. Sort of the whole world sucks. Both sides suck. You saw it a bit with the first, we haven't learned that much about him, but the guy who attempted to assassinate Trump last year in Butler, Pennsylvania, Crooks, he, in the lead up to the assassination attempt on Trump, was both researching ways to kill Biden and Trump. So I know we don't live in the world of taking breaths or pauses or anything these days, but everyone needs to take a breath here as we figure out what connection this guy had to anything, what his opinions were, what his motives were beyond that. Now, what I think you see with Stephen Miller is he sees this as an opportunity. He sees assassination as an opportunity to what he calls dismantle these terrorist networks. Now, what organizations will he go after? What will that involve legally? What can they do? I think it all remains to be seen, but this has also been a fear of some folks, is that they're going to go too far from their perspective and cast blame where there is no blame. Whereas in many of these sort of assassination attempts through time, they've been pretty isolated, right? This hasn't been like a larger group, but in many cases, the domestic assassinations we've seen through the decades, political assassinations, have all, for the most part, been committed by individual actors. And so we will see what the administration does here, how they follow up here. But they're certainly, trying to keep this issue front and center. You saw J.D. Vance hosting the Charlie Kirk show. There's going to be the memorial service at a football stadium in Arizona next weekend. President Trump is set to go there. And so this issue isn't going away anytime soon. And how they follow up remains to be seen.
Now to some other news, a potential deal in the works to save TikTok for U.S. users. Word out on Monday morning that U.S. and Chinese negotiators reached a framework deal after 2 days of talks. So this would allow the app to keep operating in the United States. The latest deadline for the app, which is currently owned by the Chinese company ByteDance, to either be banned or sold to a U.S. owner is this Wednesday. Until now, China has shown very little interest in any type of a deal. The Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, said President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping will officially make the announcement on Friday. Bessent said this deal is between two private companies, but that the commercial terms have been agreed upon. He didn't give any other details there. Congress, if you remember, passed a law back when Joe Biden was president, which banned the app unless it sells to a U.S. buyer over national security concerns. Now, that was supposed to take effect in January, but the Trump administration has been continuously pushing back the deadline for the ban to take effect. Trump told CNBC in an interview last year that he believed that the platform was a national security threat, although the White House has since started its own TikTok account.
Yeah, I mean, going back, Trump was one of the first people calling for a ban of TikTok back in his first term. You know, he was stressing it. He was pushing it. He was trying to find ways to get it banned. Ultimately, legally, he wasn't able to do it that way. But then over time, we saw towards the end of Biden, there, Congress and Biden get together, huge bipartisan majority saying TikTok is a problem. Unless ByteDance sells it to a non-Chinese owner, it needs to be banned here. But during that time, Trump has changed his tune on it and says, you know, even if there are some issues, I think that it was, a key part of me getting reelected. And, I'm here to save TikTok, which is why he's postponed the ban several times this year. As for this conversation with China, the U.S. has multiple levels of negotiations happening with China, right? There's the tariffs, there's various economic agreements, there's a support with fentanyl, which, some of the ingredients for fentanyl come out of China and then go to the drug cartels. I mean, the U.S. deals with China on so many levels. So TikTok is just one issue in that. And so at the same time, as part of these negotiations, China is desperate to get Trump to visit China. And so that's part of these conversations as well. As for the specifics on who owns TikTok, who buys TikTok, who gets control of TikTok from ByteDance, Oracle chairman Larry Ellison has expressed interest. Elon Musk has expressed interest in potentially buying TikTok. Walmart has looked into TikTok. There are a whole variety of companies and individual billionaires in the U.S. that are interested in being part of the TikTok solution here. So we will await to see if we get some headlines on Friday or if stuff leaks out before.
Okay, time for the speed read, starting with the latest in the war on drugs. From CBS News, President Trump announced that the U.S. military carried out a strike on Monday against the latest alleged drug cartel boat leaving Venezuela. According to Trump, the U.S. struck the boat while it was in international waters. 3 people on board were killed. The president writing on Truth Social in all caps, quote, "Be warned, if you are transporting drugs that can kill Americans, we are hunting you."
Yeah, hunting, key word there. Remember, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago when President Trump ordered the strike on the boat with 11 individuals, really showcasing that the U.S. is moving, or at least adding, the military element here to the law enforcement element of the drug war. He's made a point here of calling them narco-terrorists, of deeming these various cartels across South America and Latin America terrorist groups, designated terrorist groups, similar to how we designate the groups, many of them out of the Middle East and South Asia. And so now this is the second strike in 2 weeks in the Caribbean of drug boats. They've made a point both times of releasing the footage of the boat being blown up. The last strike, the Venezuelan president, the Venezuelan dictator, Nicolas Maduro, calling that last strike a heinous crime. Now, certainly, when it comes to international law, you could argue that when it comes to UN rules, when it comes to the sea, many can argue that this violates portions of international law. At the same time, the U.S. has been conducting the war on terror essentially this way for the past 25 years. And you haven't heard much criticism of that at all, whether it's drone strikes or military strikes on targets around the world, Democratic presidents, Republican presidents. This is effectively taking how the U.S. has been approaching ISIS, Al-Qaeda, the various groups in the Middle East who are seen as threats, now applying them to the drug cartels, in particular, the Venezuelan drug cartels making their way in the Caribbean. Part of the hope here from the White House and the Pentagon is that it'll have a deterrent effect, that ultimately there will be a bunch of people who now, after two of these strikes, say, maybe I'm not going to be drug running this way anymore. Now, of course, always the fear is that they'll find a different way to do this and find different ways to smuggle in drugs if the boats continue to be blown up in the Caribbean.
From the local Fox News station in Utah, the FBI has arrested two people after an explosive device was found under a local TV news vehicle in Salt Lake City on Friday. That bomb was found under a Fox News 13 truck. It didn't explode. No injuries were reported. Officials say that the explosive was, quote, lit, but failed to function as designed. On Sunday, the FBI arrested two people at their home in Magna, which is west of Salt Lake City, 58-year-old Adib Nasir and 31-year-old Ahmed Nasir.
According to authorities, the pair now faces a number of charges, including the threat of terrorism, as well as possessing weapons of mass destruction. An FBI search of the home found bomb-making materials in addition to firearms. We're going to learn more, Jill, about just what this involved and what these two were up to. But this device was placed under a news vehicle just 2 days after the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
Moshe, there's so much happening in the world right now and happening here in the United States that this didn't get a ton of attention. But as a reporter who spent hours upon hours for many years of my life in news vehicles like that, this shook me to my core, I have to say. From the New York Times, New York Governor Kathy Hochul announced Sunday that she was endorsing Zohran Mamdani for New York City mayor in a New York Times essay. She initially refused to endorse Mamdani after his stunning victory in the Democratic primary in June. And then she finally made the call about 10 weeks after that primary win. We're now about 8 weeks out from the general election. Hochul is considered a moderate. Mamdani is a Democratic socialist, but she is up for re-election as governor in 2026, and her decision not to endorse Mamdani up until now has rankled many city Democrats. Hochul's change of heart comes even as the two politicians have disagreed on many policies, like raising taxes for rich New Yorkers, criticism of the NYPD, and his views on Israel and Palestinians. Hochul wrote, quote, "New York needs leaders who will put aside differences, stand up, and fight back against Mr. Trump. Mr. Mamdani and I will both be fearless in confronting the president's extreme agenda with urgency, conviction, and the defiance that defines New York. And we must never allow Mr. Trump to control our city like the king he wants to be."
The implication there is that Eric Adams would, and Andrew Cuomo would. We have been reporting recently about the attempts apparently within the Trump administration to find Eric Adams a job. Also the fact that the Eric Adams indictment got dropped last year. And the argument by many is it was a quid pro quo with the Trump administration to get him to cooperate. At the same time, we've been reporting on attempts by President Trump to try to clear the field for Andrew Cuomo, as it appears he's probably the most competitive non-Mamdani candidate in the field. But he can't really compete with all these other individuals in the field who are all splitting the moderate and conservative vote in the city. So effectively, you have Hochul here saying the other guys are too connected to Trump. I am going to go with Mamdani, even though I disagree with him on a few things. She did note in that opinion piece, Jill, that they have had hard conversations. And it does come, as Mamdani said last week, that he will apologize to the NYPD for calling it anti-gay, a racist force. Mamdani has been very critical through the years. He's called for the defunding of the police. Now he says he won't defund the police. But ultimately, when it comes to public safety, that's been a huge issue. You mentioned the Israel issue as well. She's very pro-Israel. He continues to reiterate that he would arrest Prime Minister Netanyahu, among other things. That was not clear again. The NYPD has the ability to arrest a foreign leader when they come to New York. Nonetheless, I think she sees the writing on the wall here. He's dominating the polls. She also desperately needs liberal and progressive voters to come out for her next year in what will be a very competitive election, Jill. You know, we haven't seen a competitive election this far out in a while in New York between a Republican and a Democrat. New York has historically been very, very blue. But Elise Stefanik, the Republican congresswoman from upstate, is planning to run a very aggressive campaign against Hochul. By the way, she was one of the people cheering this endorsement yesterday because Republicans are going to try to tie Kathy Hochul to everything Zoran Mamdani stands for as a democratic socialist. And so she came out saying that Kathy Hochul is embracing a raging communist who will destroy New York, putting New Yorkers last. So we'll see what effect this has. Certainly there have been some major national Democrats who have been reluctant to endorse Mamdani, given his democratic socialist views, given some of, again, his views on the NYPD and other issues, including Chuck Schumer, the most senior Democrat in the Senate, Hakeem Jeffries, the most senior Democrat in the House, also both happen to be New York Democrats on that national stage. Neither has endorsed Mamdani, so this ratchets up the pressure there. But we're about 8 weeks out now from this mayoral election, and it looks like he continues to consolidate the field here. And unless something, Cuomo makes some major move, Adams drops out, Sliwa drops out, it's looking like it's Mamdani's to win right now, at least, again, about 2 months out.
And finally, from the New York Post, supermarkets are pushing customers to be more considerate shoppers. An American who moved to the UK has gone viral after sharing their experience with grocery shopping across the pond in a TikTok video with over 150,000 views. This user described a recent trip to Sainsbury's, which is one of the biggest grocery stores in London, comparing the brand to the U.S. chain of super Walmarts. Now, one thing that this person said was that she could not comprehend the shopping cart protocol, which asks shoppers to bring a £1 coin deposit to unlock and use a cart or a buggy and then return it when they are done. So Americans were pretty unfamiliar with this type of coin-operated shopping cart. But others clarified that it is actually a courtesy to workers because it encourages customers to be mindful of where they leave their baskets. So if you've been to at least a suburban supermarket in America, you know that there's just carts all over the parking lot, even though there are designated cart drop-offs throughout the parking lot.
Yeah, the UK is not alone in this. If you go to grocery stores around the world, I have seen this in a number of European countries, Middle Eastern countries, Asian countries. Jill, more and more, I feel like I've seen it a handful of times in the US. I will say, as a former bagger at a grocery store, Jill, my first job at Garden Fresh in Wheeling, Illinois, I will appreciate this because one of my jobs as a bagger was to go out to the parking lot every few hours during my shift and gather all the grocery carts, right? You line them up together, and I'm trying to I'm 16 at the time or 15 at the time, seeing if I could push 30 at a time and turn them and get them back to the store. So I definitely appreciate this. That would have made my life easier back in 1996, 5.
It's character building, Moshe.
It was character building for a young Moshe. I was conceiving of my ideas one day for a social media-based news platform while I was gathering those carts in the parking lot. So while we're talking about shopping carts, Jill, a number of U.S. supermarkets are testing high-tech shopping carts that have the power of AI behind them. Wegmans has launched Caper Carts, which are Instacart's AI-powered smart carts at upstate New York locations, which track your spending while shopping. So as you're putting items in the cart, it is tracking them in real time. I know with some of the Amazon stores, they've had some of the technology as well. I think, we're in 2025 going into 2026. It's about time that our shopping carts do more for us than just sort of let us load groceries. All right, now time for On This Day in History. We begin on this day, September 16th, 1620. The Mayflower, sailing from Plymouth, England, bound for the Americas with 102 passengers. The ship was headed for Virginia, where the colonists, half religious dissenters and half entrepreneurs, had been authorized to settle by the British Crown. However, there was some stormy weather and some navigational errors that forced the Mayflower off course, and the so-called Pilgrims would reach Massachusetts instead in late December. So after a 66-day voyage, the ship would land on the tip of Cape Cod, now known as Provincetown, Massachusetts. Fast forward to the 20th century, on this day in 1956, Rainbow Crafts introduced Play-Doh, which I am very grateful for, Jill. It is one of the things that Olivia is obsessed with and really keeps her busy at a restaurant, at the airport, for sometimes nearly an hour, Jill, as she's just doing stuff with Play-Doh. And so happy birthday to you, Play-Doh, turning 69 years old today.
Better than slime, I have to say.
Yeah, no
Neater.
slime. Yeah, no. Play-Doh, I'm a big fan of Play-Doh. Double down on Play-Doh. If I could buy a part of the company, I would. And Jill, going to the 21st century, on this day in 2017, you got married.
I did, Moshe.
I am told a happy 8th wedding anniversary to you and Michael.
Yes, Moshe. 8 incredible years, 2 awesome, amazing children. No fights ever.
No, never. It's always a sign of I would say too much fighting, unhealthy marriage. No fighting, also unhealthy marriage.
Right. Good point. So, Michael, if you are listening to this podcast today, which I think you are because you listen, I believe, every day, happy anniversary. I love you. And I can't wait to celebrate tonight at Back to School Night. Moshe, that is our big night planned.
Happy anniversary. We end here with a bit of pop culture history. You share your anniversary with Frasier, the TV show, premiering on this day 32 years ago on NBC. And now to something slightly more upbeat. A happy 46th birthday to Flo Rida, born Tremar Lascelle Dillard on this day in, where else? Florida. Prolific there for a few years, Jill. Good Feeling, Right Round, My House, Club Can't Handle Me. It just makes you feel good, the Flo Rida music. And now I know he does like a lot of corporate events. Many of you, when you have your corporate retreats, Flo Rida does that circuit these days.
Which makes sense because the people in charge of booking him probably were in the club at about that time. The aughts, as they say.
The aughts.
The aughts.
Yeah, no, the club couldn't handle them.
Good times, Moshe. And I'll know Mo News has officially made it when Flo Rida performs at our holiday party.
When we can afford Flo Rida
Yes.
for our holiday party. Yes.
The sign of success.
Right now, he's just performing for a handful of us. I don't know how much of a show it would be.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Mo News podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. It will help us grow. Follow us, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and review us in the App Store.
See everyone back here tomorrow.
They can listen to more than the app.